your day.
Wallet with $10 and you get $3 to withdraw after 15 days. Sendwave is here to make it easy for you, to make it faster for you, and is here to connect you with your loved ones by sending them money, some tunes to use during these periods. So get downloading. But in the meantime, in studio, Dr. Likaka Lichetu, who's a governance and security consultant. We'll be joined a little bit later with Philip Sikolia, who is an advocate of the High Court and a political analyst. We shall be looking at weekend review, infrastructure money, ODM power plays, and the NADCO report. Where are we with all these? Likaka, karibu sana.
Thank you.
Naona baridi mengia pull neck.
It is necessary, when you get to my age, you have to start taking care of yourself in terms of not just exposing yourself to the cold weather like we used to play in water.
Yeah. Muhimu sana. Karibu. And as we get into this, today we are in the Central African Republic. And in Central African Republic is a very rich country with a lot of resources and minerals. They have gold, they have diamond, they have as well uranium. When you talk about uranium, you think about the war that is ongoing right now. They are fighting for nuclear warheads and nuclear power. And one integral ingredient that they need is uranium. So one asks the question, if world powers are protecting the process or the manufacture of nuclear power, yet uranium is needed, why are they considered the poorest country in the world? Question for another day, but let's go to the proverb. An elephant does not limp when walking on thorns. An elephant does not limp when walking on thorns. How would you interpret it?
Definitely, you'll have the confidence if you actually have what it takes to do the task that you have at hand. And indeed, that's why it's able to walk comfortably, whether it's stepping on thorns or whatever way. It's because you have that which it takes for you to deliver or to execute the task that you have at hand. That's how I see it.
Yeah. Well said, well interpreted. If you have thick skin, you have thick skin. Anyone who comes your way, you crush them and you go. And that should be the mantle for Kenyans as you get into elections. Just saying, But let's get into the week. Daktari, infrastructure money. Yesterday, the cabinet secretary actually just said that this infrastructure fund, the company that was to be set up was never set up, right? And that they had other options. All they did is to protect anyone from registering that company. Do you feel like the cabinet secretary lied to Kenyans?
Thank you. First of all, you need to appreciate the fact that as a country, we have a trust deficit. And therefore, we will remain suspicious and concerned depending on who is presenting whatever is presenting. However, for this, I tend to think the cabinet secretary was honest because it's something that has been cooking behind the scenes that we do not know. And probably it came to manifestation very well yesterday on the floor of the House. Because what was taken to the public for public participation and the conversation we had around the country is not actually what came to the House and what was passed. So I tend to think we are being controlled by a few people who tend to dangle a carrot or play politics or play in a way that we think they are concerned about us, but in the real sense, they aren't. And it came out very clearly on the floor of the House. Because why are these bills so different? Why it was passed yesterday, and I'm sure a number of people will be moving to court to contest that, because there's something quite malicious, something quite hidden. Look at the initial position. We did not intend to borrow. We are selling everything else to establish the fund. But then as we establish the fund, we are also allowing again that we can borrow. Where are we going to go as a country based on the challenges we face in financial management? Where are we going to go as a country based on the trust deficit? Because the main challenge we are facing today, and which we may talk about because we'll talk about the NADCO report, one of the challenges is debt. Have we audited our debt? Now we are getting into another vehicle to actually put us in another debt. Then the timing. Why now? Within this electoral cycle. Look at the position of the CS in the previous bill. And then see the one they have now brought. The executive is 100% in control of everything else. That's where the problem is. And remember, when we passed the 2010 Constitution, one of the things that we are pushing for was governance, transparency, and accountability.
Yeah.
This vehicle that we have now passed yesterday with our parliament, some of the raised pertinent questions, a little bit excited on how the parliamentarians were asking those ones, but I'm still doubtful because the executive still scored against Kenyans. So how will you control or manage these funds from the political angle?
I mean, Dr. Philip Sikola, karibu sana, advocate and political analyst, karibu sana.
Thank you so much.
One looks at what Dr. Hari has said, right, in terms of the executive taking charge of even parliament. From where you sit, was the government clear? Was the government factual? Was the government truthful when you talk about infrastructure fund? Initial, what the cabinet secretary was telling Kenyans, that we are forming a company to manage this fund. 5 trillion shillings we're talking about today.
Yes.
But you look at what was passed in, what appeared on the floor of the House yesterday, and one asks the question, why does it appear as if the government of Kenya is lying to its citizens? What's your position on that?
Okay, thank you so much. I think we need to understand about the process of now legislative. When Parliament wants to enact a bill, there is the initial draft that is presented maybe by the Cabinet Secretary. He say it goes to the Parliament. Now that initial draft will invite now public participation. They'll give their views on that. So it will still now be amended now to incorporate the views of the public. So you'll find that what was being passed yesterday, it is now this bill after it has gone through the first reading, second reading, and the third reading. So that now eventually now it will not be the same bill that was presented to the public initially, because now this one is now incorporating what now the views have come, what members of the House have contributed, what the committee has also come up with.
What would you say about the statements that had been earlier made by the Cabinet Secretary that appears the bill that was actually on the floor of the House is completely different from what the Cabinet Secretary has been telling 55 million Kenyans?
No, I think the Cabinet Secretary was very clear when he came out the other day, and he said that he was mistaken, which is a normal thing. He was saying that he was mistaken. He did not say that he lied, because when you talk about lying is a very strong word, and actually it connotes the intention to mislead. But he was saying that he was mistaken at that time, and it was actually in regard to the creation of the National Infrastructure Fund.
The Cabinet Secretary, was never mistaken, because we hosted him here, and he told us that the government of Kenya was actually going to form a company. Why? Because it has seen that the government is not a good manager when it comes to funds and doing business. That it's the reason why they decided to form a company that will bring in someone who will cut all the government bureaucracies that do exist. Not my words, his words. He was sitting there. That means whatever appeared in Parliament contradicts the statements that the Cabinet Secretary had been telling Kenyans. So from that basis, the Cabinet Secretary knew exactly what he was saying, and that paints him as a lie.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that when you look at the company that is supposed to be formed, it is supposed to be anchored in the law. So first of all, there has to be a legislation before a company can be formed. It cannot be formed before there is a law. Because when you look at the law now that has been passed, it is creating this as a corporate entity with perpetual succession. So it could not have been created before the bill was passed.
Well, it's mind-boggling, because I think we are a country of rule of law, or are supposed to be.
Yes.
And today we are largely operating a budget that is highly in deficit. And yet we are seeking to auction, in my opinion, our public resources and construct or create a fund for whatever, you can call it infrastructure. And in my opinion, I stand to be guided. It is that every fund that is public ought to go to the consolidated fund, and then it is dispersed from that for whatever purpose, allocation that may be qualified by the National Assembly. When we talk of an economy like ours as a Kenya, the one you're running, that is hugely in deficit, should we first even be considering creation of an alternative budget? Because I see this as an alternative budget Should we be considering an alternative budget when we are highly in debt, highly odious? I do agree. Yet we have other highly that we should prioritize and very imperative aspects of budget making and management process that we should be considering instead of instituting an infrastructure fund. Are we getting our priority right? And are we in the right space in terms of budget growth? When you look at other global economies, how they develop, even the sovereign fund, are we in that right place where we should be auctioning, in my opinion, high value institutions and investments of Kenyans, because they were bought by our taxes, to just simply have another conduit of corruption? Daktari.
My brother, you put me in a very precarious position based on our history.
Let me tell you,
people.
You are on this hot seat.
Yes. So, thank you. Because why I'm saying so is because there are many questions around our governance, and particularly financial management of this country.
Right.
During the previous regime, we are aware our books of accounts were cooked. Through the 5,000 pages and some of those hidden things, they raise pertinent questions. We have a budget fully deficit, almost 2 or 3 trillion. Here we are now talking about 4-point-something trillion of a budget. With all these challenges we are facing, first of all, the big question we want to ask is, if we have a plan for this country, the previous regime of Kibaki had Vision 2030.
Yes.
Vision 2030 is coming to an end. I hear about Singapore. I have no problem. I wish to get there. Even if it's going through Canaan or whatever, going through Canaan to get there, I don't mind. The idea will be, where is the plan, clear plan for this country going forward to get the first world? Is Sovereign Fund or the National Infrastructure Fund the way to get there? If that's the way, then what has failed with the existing parameters and existing strategies? If you listen to the Auditor General's report, all big projects have got very huge questions. And nobody has been taken to court this far. Then here, you come up with another idea. Brilliant, I like the way they are reasoning. They want to help us deal with infrastructure because we are all funding this from debt. They have again reorganized our debt, moved it forward to 2032 or beyond because of the infrastructure or because of the bond they have paid. So we look like we are comfortable. But the future of our children is in jeopardy if we continue mismanaging our funds. That's why we are raising these pertinent questions in good faith, not because we oppose the government. No, we are basically monitoring and evaluating the government to fulfill its mandate. To me, where we have a problem is actually involvement of the public and respect for the public opinion. I have a lot of concern for this government on the basis of not listening to the public. And I'll take you back to 2024, where we had that challenge. Even the issue of SHA, the public nearly opposed 80%.
Yeah.
All these challenges we face in the education sector, we have come here because the government did not listen to the common mwananchi. In agriculture, we have devolved the agriculture, but all the money remains in Nairobi. The same thing with health. Now, tell me with this fund, what will, and you listen to members of parliament, what will not affect this fund when it comes to members of parliament thinking this is another way of actually getting development to my people? How independent and political will be when it comes to management of this fund? Today, we are talking about Rironi. The last campaign, William Ruto ran on the campaign that this road, the agreement that was there, was 160 billion, which was very expensive. And he said, we are going to cancel it. We go for a cheaper one. Today, my brother, is over 200 billion.
Yes.
Where are we headed as a country?
Singapore.
So these are the concerns we are raising. We just love our Minister for Finance, but we want to be honest that as a country, let us first of all audit our debt.
Right.
I want, for example, let us put a billboard in the city center that we actually have our debt every day. We know how much we are paying. And even say now we want to pay this. Now here you come and sell our shares in Safaricom. Remember, Safaricom is just not a telco.
Yep.
It's also touching on our security. Safaricom touches on our well-being. Safaricom is everybody's household. Today, we sell this so that we can put fund together to fund infrastructure. The same infrastructure, you also want us to pay the toll on the roads that you are doing. We have fuel levy. We have other levies that can take care of these roads. Honestly, why are we lying to ourselves? That's why I really have a concern that indeed, if it is possible, I think I need to move to court because this law should not get to be implemented by Kenyans.
Right.
Because we need to protect the future generation. We need to take care of the current deficit. And I would like to give another example.
Yes.
Why I'm very skeptical with this fund. And the example is SHA. Who is controlling SHA? Where are the servers of SHA? Just like our servers for IBC.
And
even the program that we are now talking about for election, we have Kenyans who can develop it. Why are we printing our exams abroad? And we are still stealing the same exam. Why can't we print it here? So we have an issue about governance.
Yes.
Our problem is, as Kenyans, can we bring our government to accountability? Our parliament has totally failed. Yesterday, they were acting in a manner like, yes, we are getting there. But I wish they were very consistent, make laws that are pro-Mwananchi, because even the president is pro-Mwananchi.
Yeah.
We are not against the president, but we are saying, Mr. President, this is not what our forefathers intended this country to be. Let us manage our funds, live within our means, and take care of ourselves, so that tomorrow we don't have 3 million Kenyans suffering, like what is happening in northern Kenya. So to me, to just conclude on that matter, I want to say we need to interrogate the CS and the law. Even these are things that came from the public participation. Let us play a role to see through, because where there's no transparency, where there's no accountability, nobody is in charge. These are small boys club that want to form a fund for 2027.
And Philip, that's, I think, just to pick up from this, from Daktari's perspective, what is the legal recourse for the common citizen? Especially looking at the document, the draft, then you move it to what went to public participation, the amount of work that went insofar as, engaging with the citizens. I imagine the experts that sat, and engaged and did research. And then you look at the document that was being discussed in Bunge yesterday and the degree of engagement of our political classes. I mean, the political class, even to the level where they're asking what are commercially viable projects. I remember one women rep standing and saying, our interest is water. We want dams in our, constituency. And ultimately, you have now the product, which is not seemingly being acceptable to the people. But we know the kind of trajectory that Kenya has had and processes that some of which we have gone through in the past, where washasema, so tutafanya, mupende, musipende. Where is the legal recourse? And in responding to that, I see a trend, especially where matters that are of interest to the national executive are treated with a lot of, political goodwill. Tufanyeni kitu haraka haraka. But if you look at the legal requirements, especially for accountability and transparency, and it reminds me of the Nairobi County government, agreement with the national government, where, for example, the role of the county assembly was not properly thought through. And yesterday, members of National Assembly were also asking, what is our role, in holding to account government? What is our role in accountability? So what is the legal recourse? This is where we are. What do we do? How do we move forward?
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, when we talk about the recourse for the common Mwananchi or Kenyan, our courts, I think they have been very, very robust. If there is a violation or if that bill is maybe contrary to the law, the constitution, courts have always been making pronunciation on it. So as Kenyans now, the common Mwananchi should not feel that maybe all is done or all is lost. If there is a Kenyan who feels that now the passage of that bill infringes on the rights or constitutional provisions or a certain provision of the finance of public finance management, then he is at liberty to go to court. But more important is this. When you look at this infrastructure fund bill that was being passed, remember one of the concerns that actually led to even we had the protests in 2024 was all about the cost of living. And one of the reasons the government was giving as to why the cost of living was high, because most of this money that was being collected was going to service that debt. Now, when the government now has come up with a vision, just like the 2030 vision, now the government now is talking about now the Singapore route. Now it has come up with a roadmap. And remember, when you have a vision or a plan, you need to have a way of raising the finance. Now, this time around, the government now felt that now it cannot go the debt way, but instead now it goes now the investment way. This is a model whereby you have a fund, just like maybe if I can use an example of NSSF. NSSF is collecting money from the pension scheme. Now, this money is invested in various projects. We have housing projects, we have whatever. And now, the members now will benefit from now those the dividends. So it is actually the same analogy the government wanted to create. That now we want to create what we are calling a national infrastructure fund. Then this fund now, people can buy into it. They invest money there.
Philip, if that is what the CS said to you, he lied to you. And I qualify my statement. NSSF makes investment from their surplus, from their savings. Kenya is in deficit. Already we are paying 2.2 trillion plus annually to service our debt. Our tax revenue is around 2.4 trillion. So you see the imbalance. So we cannot compare NSF investment with the formation of a national infrastructure fund because we are in deficit. As the Daktari says, we should first do our public debt audit so that we know where are the gaps. Then, would the priority be formation of the National Infrastructure Fund or dealing with our debt situation first so that we can make, as Kevin was saying, viable investment that would have return on investment to the Kenyan?
Yeah, I wanted to take a short commercial break. When you come back, that is a question that has been posed to you because I also have several other questions before we get into the NADCO report. But let's take a short commercial break. We come back and continue with this conversation at exactly 31 minutes after 7 a.m. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. The weather with Spice FM.
And yes, it is a cold.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Without again burdening mwananchi. Now, when you look at now the coming or the enactment of this bill, I believe this is now the best way the government can actually ensure that we have development in the country without now recourse to the issue of borrowing, either domestic borrowing or going for the Chinese way of loans.
But Daktari, we talk about this fund being set up and that the country is not intending to borrow. But what we saw on the floor of the House yesterday was that despite, especially with the new structure of this infrastructure fund, what we will essentially do is again borrow, right? That there is no way in the formation or in the structure of this new bill that Kenya will not borrow. We will still borrow. But that notwithstanding, we have to read development of the country personally in twofold. That there is a time in this country when Mwai Kibaki was there, he borrowed. Kenyans can say, we saw what the job that was done with that money, right? The problem we do have in this country is that we borrow, we misuse the funds. The debt that he's talking about is it has been labeled to be odious debt because we know in what instances you borrow to do what, right? We borrow for development. We borrow to meet the short deficit that we do have that has to be repaid back. But if you look at the 12 trillion shillings that has been borrowed, show me 12 trillion shillings in the economy today in terms of development, and you can't place your finger on it. So what do we need? Do we need a new infrastructure fund that will open up an opportunity for us to borrow more? Yet we have not audited what we have already borrowed, what that money has done, so that we seal the wastage, we ensure that monies that have been borrowed and is being paid by Kenyans actually does what it is meant to do. Where are we? Priority Kowapi, what is important?
I'll put it this way. Yes, we need development, but we can coin our development within our means by addressing and improving efficiency within government. We saw Kibaki borrow, but remember even during that time, there was public goodwill because of the fact that we had changed the regime. And the same thing, our president came on that platform on the basis of that goodwill. The problem the president is doing is the misuse of that goodwill. He's been using thorax to push these things down the throat of Kenyans. That's where the Kenyans are a little bit uncomfortable, and nobody's telling this. This is the plain truth. When it comes to the issues of borrowing, we need to borrow. But the question is, the money is used for what? Where is Eurobond? Why was the former Auditor General having problems with Uhuru when it came to Eurobond? Up to today, that money never came to Kenya. We never saw it, but then we have to pay. So this is the concern that we are not just doing for ourselves, but also for future generation. So what we're asking is a brilliant idea. We support it. But for example, in this clause, in this bill that they passed yesterday, I'll be uncomfortable if it continues to have that component of borrowing. But then the question goes back again. Why are we selling our national assets in the name of establishing a fund? How can we enhance efficiency with the existing structures that we have? So that today, if we know very well we have a law that was passed that brought in place fuel levy. Where is fuel levy going? How is it being utilized? Then the concern will be, if we enhance efficiency and do away with this kura kera thing, just have one agency. We used to have Ministry of Public Works. We remove away, we do away with all these regulations so that we have one agency that can be efficient and deliver to Kenyans. That's where the concern is. Indeed, we have to develop. But the question is this the strategy that will help us to get to Singapore? Personally, I'm opposed to it on the basis of poor leadership, governance concerns, lack of transparency and accountability. And I want the same government which came on the platform of state capture. What are we seeing in all this? If you listen to the flow of what members of parliament were contributing to, and I look at the structure, I look at the bill itself, it's a purely state capture because the big boys on the house on the hill are the ones who are going to make the decision for this infrastructure fund. So I feel we need to come up with a clear plan. And I'm still going back to Vision 2030. Let us come up with a plan that we Kenyans participate in, align it in terms of our finances, in terms of our political leadership, and then the vision where we need to go. As a developing country, where are our priorities? Infrastructure is key. Education is key. Agriculture is key. Health is key. These are the sectors we need to touch on strongly. Then say, this is the way we are going to go about it. So we go procedurally. I'm also concerned. Why are we doing it now? Why now?
Why now, Philip?
Yeah.
From a legal point of view, it would appear as if the government is trying to amend the Public Finance Management Act.
Through the back door.
Through the back door. Do you agree? Which is highly unconstitutional because, we could go round and round about the issue. But I think the essence of the matter, the crux of the matter is that we need prudent management of our resources. The government is failing to do that. Every day they report we are losing like 2 billion plus every day. We see the expenditure from the State House. And yet here we are trying to auction, my word is auction, our properties, hard-earned properties, just to raise a fund that is going also to be mismanaged. And we have the fuel levy and other forms of income that could easily be diverted to infrastructure. However, why the need to form this supplementary or secondary alternative budget making process in the guise of development? Is it legal?
Well, when we talk about what is legal, it means it has gone through Parliament, because the Parliament, as the arm of the government, is the one that has been given the legal mandate to legislate. So if it is not in accordance with that legislation and nobody has come to declare the legislation is unconstitutional, there is nothing illegal there. And I think there's also something that now maybe we need to understand. There has been this aspect that we want to borrow. And I think the confusion that was arising is when you look at the part creating the National Insurance Fund Board, when it talks about it will be a body corporate. There is a part there they say that as a board corporate, it will have power to enter into contracts to borrow. This is just, they are saying that this is one of the features of a corporate body. But when you look at Section 14 of that bill, it is very, very clear. In fact, it says, not Section 15. Yeah, Section 15. It says that this board shall have no power to borrow against its assets. So already that one now shows what your concern was, that now we want to auction our public assets. They are saying this board will not be borrowing against its assets.
It
Because
shall have
it is
no
just-
assets.
No, the assets are this.
Yes.
We have already said that from the sale of now the government interest in the public.
Yes, the KPC, the Safaricom and all. Mhm.
The proceeds will go there. So assets now, that means it will be having money.
Mhm.
Now that money, it is said that this money cannot be used as security to borrow. So that one, it's just managing a fund. As I was saying, the easiest way of understanding this is we take an example like now, and that I was using in SAFE, that you have a fund. Even old mutual, they have those who have investment funds. Now the funds now that the government is creating that now is called a National Investment Fund. Now,
From
money-
what? Let's look. If you look at the source of the funding, if we had the resources and they went into the fund, the management of it, we would have no problem with it.
Yes.
But you're looking at the current economy that we are in today does not allow us to develop such a fund. And even if you were to auction again, I dare say, our resources, is putting them in an infrastructure fund the priority today.
It is a priority because right now, if we have to develop, the other option will be now to go under borrow loans. Now, which already that route we have said, the government has said it doesn't want to take that route. Because we already saw borrowing now, it is only creating now a vicious cycle, whereby you borrow money, then whatever you are generating now, almost 70% of it goes to repay the debt. There is no money left now for development of the country. Now, that is the reason why now the government feels that infrastructure especially, we need to have a specific fund where now the money in that one is only being used, and they have said it, in commercially viable infrastructures.
So
Meaning, just a moment.
Yes.
When you talk about commercially viable, it means now where it is being invested, that investment itself can generate additional money. Like now, if you invest in SGR, now once the SGR is operating, of course, it is going to generate money. So it becomes now a self-revolving fund. And that one is something that now Kenyans actually should be happy about. Because unlike now where you are going to take a loan, and the loan now, everything you're getting is going there.
Question, because part of what the NADCO report actually recommended was, quote unquote, legalizing other funds. Part of these other funds are the National Government Constituency Development Fund.
Yes.
And if you read this, the bill, actually in section 4, it gives you the purpose of the fund. And it goes further to say that it will be used to scale up and accelerate development of catalytic national infrastructure, including national highways and railway networks, air and seaports, electricity generation, transmission, distribution, water reservoirs, irrigation, agriculture infrastructure. And then 2 is to mobilize private capital, non-traditional sources, etc. Now, the challenge I think, or rather I believe that most Kenyans have is this obsession with creation of funds. So you already have what is existing, part of whose roles or functions, will be what the National Infrastructure Fund is supposed to be doing. So that, for example, when you have the roads maintenance levy, or you have the budget, the sector-wide budget, for specific services like water, irrigation, etc. What is the justification of the fund? Is it necessary? What happens to these other funds? Are they going to be collapsed? What happens to the conversation around the legalization of NGCDF, for example? Remember, it's an active conversation that is currently ongoing as part of the NADCO report recommendations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, we are not going to collapse other funds, remember. As I said, this fund is being established by a specific law. Remember, when you pass a law, unless you have now repealed the other laws, that is when I can say it is now going to replace all those funds. Remember, this fund is very, very specific to infrastructure. And it has gone ahead to list what infrastructures it is talking about. Things like seaport, things like now railways, things like now roads, So it has specified the areas in which now the investments or funds used from this, the money from this fund will be used.
And at the same time, we have a Ministry of Roads,
Yes.
right? That has a budget that is appropriated by the National Assembly.
Yes.
And we are saying that as the Ministry of Roads is doing its whatever it's supposed to do, we also have a fund that is supposed to do the similar, same things. Where is the departure point?
There is no departure point here. Remember that what we are saying, that we have these projects that require huge sums of money. You'll find that even now the budget allocation in our ministry might not be enough. Like now, if we want, like now we are talking about the Rironi Road. From all the way from Rironi, it goes to Malaba. Now you'll find that if you were to do that road, using now what has been allocated to the Ministry of Roads, that money will not be enough. So that is why now such a huge project, and that's why we have talked about commercially viable projects.
But the Rironi Road is not a Ministry of Roads budget. Is it?
It is not.
My question, Daktari, is very simple, right? As we speak today, there's a fund that Kenyans contribute to that category called the PFM, Public Finance Management. It's the kitty where Kenyans put their money, and that is controlled. There is oversight over the same. And Kenyans have been giving trillions of shillings to that kitty that should go to fund their education, their development, their health, and everything else within the country, including salaries to the executive and everybody else, civil service. Now, are we able today to sit here as Kenyans, honestly speaking, that in that kitty, funds have been utilized, that we have found value for money, that we can account for each and every single shilling that Kenyans have collected into that kitty, into that fund, to say that we have done this, we are able to open another fund to be able to do the roads, the seaports, and everything else. Because as we speak today, Uhuru Kenyatta is the one who constructed the Lamu port, right? And he constructed it using loan, debt, right?
Absolutely.
The SGR we're talking about, debt. We talk about the expansion of Mombasa port, again, is debt. But there are things that we have seen being done in the country. We can have a conversation on how the money was utilized there. The value for money, again, is a subject that is there. Are we able to comfortably say that, you know, we can look at how we've spent our money and then we can open another fund that it's oversight we can take away from Parliament, that this money does not need to go to, does not really need to be controlled by the PFM Act, you know, that we trust ourselves to say, this money can just stay in that in that club there called National Investment Fund, and that we will get a value for money. Because that is where, as a Kenyan, I sit, that I have contributed into this kitty, but I'm not seeing value for it.
Unfortunately, my brother, you will not see value for the money in Kenyan scenario based on the history, the leadership, and what is happening. If you have read the Auditor General's report, and they're available on our website, pertinent questions, any serious project has got very huge audit questions. And this is where the concern is. I am not opposed to this fund.
Yes.
But I have questions around it because we don't have the right strategy. I see it as a plan to also embezzle public funds. Why am I saying this? USAID exited the other day. You see the problem we are facing in health completely. Our national wage bill, government wage bill, is over 50% of our budget. If you want to establish such funds, it requires to make bold decisions, which I expected to deal with ghost schools, ghost teachers, ghost hospitals, deal with all these challenges, improve efficiency within government so that we raise the money, spur the economy to grow so that we establish this fund and gently fund it procedurally on annual basis to grow it. But then the component where you start selling our institutions in the name of privatization, which is basically stealing with a good name privatization, because these people are actually buying are actually proxies. So the reality is Kenyans will not see value for money based on the history and where we are so far. I would have expected more stringent measures strictly within the Constitution and by the PFM, which we have seen even from the bill that has passed. There are many red flags. We have provided for oversight by the parliament. But you see, for the bill passed yesterday, and I'm sure the president will actually sign it, even he may be signing it this morning, because there are pertinent questions there. We feel that the executive or a certain arm of it is controlling how we as a people need to run our affairs. Yes, we have given the president all the powers, but can he lead us in the right direction and listen to the concerns of Kenyans so that we get value for money? 5 trillion is actually a parallel budget to our national budget. So what will happen to the national budget? Are we going to collapse it? Because as we actually fund here, and then he has assets, but then there's something they're saying commercially viable.
Yeah.
Now, when you talk about commercially viable, then the question comes in: where do you allocate or balance this development across the country? Where is the viability across the country? That goes back to the same historical challenges where we have actually marginalized certain areas. Is Lamu Port giving us value for money? Is Lapset giving us value for money? SGR and what is happening today? Because the concern we had raised that time was, why are we moving goods very fast? You know, we'll have expanded the original railway to be able to move slightly faster compared to what we are doing. So these are concerns, even if you talk about the road to Rironi, which I'm waiting until we are waiting for it because we are facing a huge problem on that road. The question would be, why did we cancel the contract with the French company or the other companies? What was wrong at that time? So those are pertinent things we need to lay bare on the table. And then oversight. We do not respect the auditor's report. We also don't respect or obey instruction and guidance from the control of budget. So these are the concerns that Kenyans have. If we want to go that Singapore, we must make bold decisions. And one of the bold decisions we are supposed to make is to actually strip the government. Let's make the government lean. The way we said 22 ministries, let's make the government lean. Let's enhance efficiency. Then whatever money we are going to save from here, let us start putting in priority areas. I support the infrastructure fund, but I'm very skeptical about its transparency and its accountability. Although I'm not opposed to it, but I think we have many questions around.
The opposition actually is accusing the government of probably linking this fund to 2027 political campaigns. Do you think that this is a close comparison?
My brother, the mango doesn't fall far from whatever the tree. The reality of the matter is, I'm very skeptical with the current regime because we don't have a clear plan. We just wake up with the political statements about Singapore, about Hustler Fund, about whatever we are coming up now with this fund. Let us have a clear plan, because as Kenyans, we want to be certain where we are going, so that we all buy in and we support the president. Yeah. I want at a time where, you remember those days we used to arrest police officers for taking bribes. So that is the kind of thing we want to support the president, that please take us to Singapore. This is the direction we need to go. But now you've already robbed us from our housing levy. Then here we have another fund. Then here with SHA, it's not working. Yeah. Teachers are all over complaining. Yeah. So these are the concerns we are raising, that please let us just think together and move our country together.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something about whether it is tied to the 2027 elections. I think that information, I think, is not now based on what when you look at the cabinet policy paper that gave rise to this. The plan is for 10 years. So the government is planning to raise that money over a period of 10 years, the 5 trillion. We have now the first projection of half of that amount, 2.5 trillion, that is meant to be done in the first 5 years. So you can clearly see that elections is only a year away. But we are talking about this fund that is now being set up, and it looks at covering a period of 10 years plan. So I think it will be not proper for us to start imputing that now it is meant to use for the campaign.
Yes.
The plan is very clear. It is a 10-year plan.
All right.
Yes.
I think it is a good place to end the conversation because this will keep on unraveling. In the coming days, we will see
What happened
how
to
this
the,
fund...
what happened to the, whatever, 15 billion trees at the 10 years?
They're still growing them. So what happens now is the conversation continues. We will definitely see how this matter continues to play in the public light. But Kenyans, it is your time as well to interrogate what is happening at exactly 8 a.m. Good morning, asanteni sana. I'm Dr. Likaka Lichetu, who's a governance and security consultant, and Philip Sikolia, advocate and a political analyst. Good morning.
Thank you so much.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start